So I think we can start now. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. You
okay.
Ready? All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you for the introduction as well. So hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation. It's going to be about Open BIM standards global adoption. So my name is Mahmoud Al-Sharif. Quick recap. I'm a BIM instructor. In general, I teach people, professionals, companies. I have a master's in global BIM management. I'm part of the CIPC, which is the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers. I'm an architect as a background. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So the agenda for today is going to be, first of all, we're going to talk about the relationship between different stakeholders so that we understand why it's important to have unified standards across them. There you go. And then, so how to adopt these international standards and the importance of OpenBIM in international standardization. And what can we achieve with OpenBIM? Just some examples there, or benefits of some examples. And following and supporting the path of Building Smart, which is the nonprofit organization behind the OpenBIM standards. So brief introduction before we start going into the main items. I'm sure most of you know what BIM is, Building Information Modeling. That's still the official translation of it. So it's basically the collaboration, and it's a set of technologies, processes, and policies. So that allows collaboration between all the stakeholders. And it also enables verification and validation. And it also gives businesses security and resilience. OpenBIM is simply BIM put in a vendor neutral based on open standards and workflows. So the relationship between stakeholders. So everyone that has to do with the project, that works with the project. So the ACO stakeholders, first of all, we know usually it's AEC, but recently they've added an O for the owner. Then are its investors, employees, customers, and suppliers. In the construction industry, we have owners, designers, contractors, and suppliers, and many others. And that's how we see BIM connecting everyone. See architects, facilities managers, project managers, even the end users themselves, because they're going to be using the space, fabricators, suppliers, and everyone else you can see here. So all stakeholders will be using the same information model for different purposes, right? So it starts with the designer and then goes to the contractor, let's say, and then it goes to the owner at the end of the day. All stakeholders will benefit from using BIM in a different way. Let's say in design, they do the efficiency cost, and then some use it for sustainability, and maybe the contractor uses it mostly for coordination, and then the owner uses it mostly for asset management. So all stakeholders will also use BIM for visualization in one way or the other. The designer uses it for, let's say, renders and animations. The contractor uses it for simulations, which is 4D. And then the owner will use it for also visualizing the space while analyzing it as well. So that way we can see that the information model that starts with the designer will be carried out all the way to handover and even used for innovation. So it's important to understand that if we use the same model and use the same standards, that would be great. The importance of ISO standards instead of just any national standards or corporate standards, let's say. Just a quick definition of the standards. Methods, procedures, and processes, because these words we see a lot in the BIM execution plans and the BIM standards. These are very important to follow. So standard is level of quality or achievement that is thought to be acceptable. So you judge using that the quality of something else. A method is a particular way of doing something. The procedure is a set of actions that is the official or accepted way of doing something. So it is designed to describe who, what, where, when, and why by means of establishing corporate accountability. So it's kind of like putting policies in place and following them that support the standard. And the process is a series of actions that you take in order to achieve a result. Now, we all know something called business. First of all, you can see I'm going to talk about the standards and consistency, and then I'm going to move on to see how we can benefit from. So we see in the PAS 1192 Part 2, which is now obsolete, they don't use it even in the UK. We used to have levels of BIM, right? Have level. Now in the new ISO standard, and as you can see here, it is the one used in the UK as well. That's why we have BS. We have stages instead, stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. And this shows why we need to have unified standards. We don't want people saying level 1, level 2, and we don't have other people saying stages, and maybe some other people in another country having different standards and referring to them differently. So we also have a great example of LOD. We all know what level of detail is. Maybe we don't, because you have level of detail, level of development, level of definition, level of accuracy, level of information. So you can see how confusing this is, right? You have a lot of different standards by that based on different countries or continents, and confusing. The ISO 19650 Part 1 came with the level of information, which is all the disruption and just putting one definition and allowing everyone to use it. So as it states in the standard, it says the level of information need of each deliverable should be its purpose. This should include the appropriate determination of quality, quantity, and granularity of information. This can vary from deliverable to deliverable. Now, recently, they've started working on the level of information need in more detail in the European standard that will be released hopefully by the end of 2020. So we can have more in-depth look at how we can use this and get rid of the LOD all in all. You can also check BIMQ, which is an online platform that allows you to create the level of information need accurately and in a very lean way. So another thing here, we have terminology confusion. So that's again the example of PAS 1192 Part 2. The EIR is employers, while exchange information and people talking about EIR as employers information requirement. But even in the UK, they don't use that anymore. So after all of that, you can understand what ISO standards, because they have to be international. And that allows and ensures that the quality and safety in both products and services in international trade are met. It helps cut costs by improved systems and procedures. Systems and procedures are all unified, and all the stakeholders are using the same ones. It provides companies with a marketing advantage over the competition. You see, when a client wants to hire a designer, for example, or a contractor, if he's ISO certified, he's going to have an edge on the other companies. It removes barriers between cities, states, and countries. So if you're using the same standards, any work, if you're removes discrepancies between designers, contractors, owners, and suppliers. It's the same thing. You're going to be using the same standards. For example, is the same naming convention. So the handover will be very smooth and lean. So it drastically enhances the workflows and processes between all disciplines and stakeholders, again, because they're unified. And it enforces unified processes, methods, procedures, and standards throughout all involved stakeholders at all stages. So the naming conventions are set in place. You will all use the same naming convention. So that helps a lot. So let's talk about adopting ISO standards. First, let's talk about standards fundamentals. We all know there's corporate standards, then you have national standards, and then you have, let's say, a continent, US and Australia, and then you have international standards, which is the aim of OpenBIM. And then, so enabled to go through that, right? Let's give some examples. The national standards, such as the British standards, the European, you have the European Committee for Standardization, and then the ISO, you have the International Organization for Standardization, and the IEC, which is the International Electrotechnical Commission, and that's in French, basically Commission Electrotechnique Internationale. So we go backwards in order to apply these standards on a national level. So we understand the ISO standards, and then we apply it on a and two standards, define requirements and processes. Step two is to inherit continents such as Europe, US, or Australia. And here we just can see an example of the European standard, basically. That's why you see EN ISO 19650. It means that Europe inherited this ISO standard and is applying it. And finally, step three is applying standards and adopting it at national level. That's why we see in the British standard for international 19650. And that's how they do it usually. So OpenBIM and ISO standards, here are most of the ISO standards, and most recently we have the ISO 19650 part 3 and 5, which came out in 2020. Of course, part 1 and 2 are go back then to 2018. And then we have, for example, the ISO 16739 part 1, which talks about the IFC, which is the industry foundation classes. We'll get to define it in a little bit. ISO 29481 part 1, for example, talks about IDM, which is Information Delivery Manual. ISO 55000, it's about asset management. And ISO 12006 part 2, which is about framework for classification. There's much more than these, I believe, standards, but I'm just stating one of the major ones. So what is the importance of OpenBIM? First of all, just an essential definition. Overall, OpenBIM is done by Building Smart, and Building Smart is behind all these standards. And the most important one that we can talk about is IFC, which is what started it all. So Building Smart promotes international consensus, or basically agreement among stakeholders on specific standards to accelerate implementation and collaboration. So Building Smart standards cover a wide range of processes and information capabilities unique to the built environment. And then the second one highlighted is the BC, again, a neutral format for collaborations. And that's why it's information delivery manual. It's a methodology for defining and documenting business processes and data requirements. MVD, so MVD is basically a set of information requirements or information exchange that is basically a schema of IFC. system showing only that. BSDD is the Building Smart Data Dictionary. And what is this trying to do is unifying the general definitions of BIM objects and their attributes. So what is the importance now that we know generally what OpenBIM is based upon? So as we talked about IFC, we know it's open. So that's what interoperability means. It allows you to use IFC regardless of the authoring software. So if you're using ArchiCAD, if you're using Revit, if you're using Tekla, it doesn't matter, you can coordinate and collaborate. So that removes the barrier between these softwares. It's open, as the name stands for it. It's open and neutral. So again, this should be allowing everyone to collaborate regardless of the software they're using. It allows to exchange reliable data because you're all using IFC. And if you use IFC correctly and you use the correct mapping, it's going to be reliable data. And just as we talked about the BCF, it allows collaboration and more collaboration, and it will not be limited by proprietary processes or data formats. That's why BCF format is an open format. So you can use the BCF files and view them in Revit, view them in ArchiCAD, view them in any other software that you require. And it gives you flexibility. So now that we have OpenBIM, you don't have to be limited to use, for example, Revit. If your company has been using ArchiCAD for many years and you're comfortable with that, you can now just keep using and just coordinate with OpenBIM, regardless of the other subcontractors or consultants. What are they using? And one important aspect that maybe has been left outside, usually we see the world now going so how does Open help? If your data rely on any software, here's down the road you data, regardless if you have a new software or a different software. Unless it's open data, you can. So here's a quick OpenBIM workflow, just as an example showing different software here. So in step number 1, we see different authoring software. We see ArchiCAD, Revit, and Tekla. So let's assume the architect is working in Revit, the structures is working with Tekla, and the MEP engineers are working with ArchiCAD. And all these engineers export to IFC, as you can see here. And what that allows is that you have one IFC basically model from each of them. And then you can basically have these IFC models federated into one model and do your clash detection, your collaboration. So step number 3 is where you do all your coordination. And BCF is in the middle of it because this is the open format that allows you to go through any other software or program that you need. In this example, we can see using BIM Collab for issue management, and then Solibri for clash detection, and BIM Sync for issue creation, issue viewing, and you can also use BIM Collab Zoom, which is a free IFC viewer that allows you also to see all these BCF issues. So you can see the issues in any of these programs and communicate them. And the nice thing is that no matter what the software is, all these issues have a specific ID, and you can also click and quickly navigate to this object in 3D. So you don't have to go looking around and creating sections and not understanding where it is. So the click of a button takes you to this issue immediately. So as we've talked about OpenBIM, there's obviously a transition to reach OpenBIM and to reach the optimum state that we require to reach in the future. So first one, I'm tool with that's closed BIM. We see that in basically most companies who use just one discipline. And then you have basically the single authoring tool for different disciplines that's called big closed BIM. What we mostly see these disciplines. And then we have the little OpenBIM, which is using different authoring software with one discipline. We do see that sometimes, but let's say using maybe Revit and maybe ArchiCAD at the same time, but that's not ideal at all. So what we need to reach is the big OpenBIM, which is using different authoring software with different disciplines, such as the structure using Tekla, structure and architecture using Revit, and they don't even have to worry about anything because they can collaborate easily. And the perfect scenario that we need to reach, okay, that's going to take a lot of time. Maybe a few projects are already there, but we need big BIM in the cloud. Okay, so everything would be in the cloud, let's say, and the facilities managers can use the cloud. And then there's the Internet of Things that happens as well, right? So everything is connected to the internet, and thus the whole building is connected to the internet. And when you have everything in the cloud and connected to the internet, then you have the digital twin, which allows you to control a virtual model and actually this is the future that we're going to. Maybe it's being applied somewhere now and in some projects, but it still needs a lot of time to be further developed and further applied. Now, here are some examples of OpenBIM benefits. And first, just as a quick example, we can see it's bridging the gap between authoring software. Just as an example, we see Revit and ArchiCAD usually are just fighting, right? And trying to compete, okay? But now, if we want to work with both software and collaborate with both software, it's very easily done. And we don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to fight anymore on that. And it's easy to collaborate no matter what the software is. So we can put Tekla next to these, we can put Vectorworks, you know, whatever the software is, you can collaborate using the OpenBIM workflow, using Ifc, using BCM. So just as a workflow for OpenBIM, we can see that for the as-built validation, if you want to validate your model against the point cloud, right? So we're using IFC, okay, which is the open format, and we're using the E57, which is the point cloud open format. Okay, so we see we're using open formats in both scenarios. And we're connecting it to this called BIM and Scan Autocore, which is a very great website that allows you to automatically check the model against the point cloud, and it generates a report for you automatically. Handover in COBie data. So COBie in short is the data that you provide for the facilities management to run the asset, to run the building. COBie stands for Construction Operations Building Information Exchange. And this has been going on for a long time, but it used to be done with papers and loads of papers. You have stacked boxes of papers that no one would ever look at or keep track of. So now understand, and then that you can use in order to do this workflow. So some people think that COBie is just done at the construction stage and it should be just done by the contractor. Well, that's the misconception here, because we can start COBie in the design stage, and that allows lean handover and allows the contractor to save a lot of time and just continue the work from the design stage. So in this example, we can see the COBie book that's called Delivering Construction Operations Building Information Exchange using. We hand over the model with the COBie data to the contractor with, you can see here, the book is called Lean Handover, COBie for Contractors. So the contractor can continue the work and further develop the COBie data and allow for commissioning and handover. So all of that will be having a quality control course, you have the COBE quality control book as well to control all of that. So that's another example how you can use OpenBIM using the same standards, allowing for a smooth job. So building smart, we need to follow that path, right? It's an open organization, and all they need is just helping businesses, owners, architects, engineers, contractors, and operators to become global industry leaders, right? This also allows mitigating risks, saving time, and reducing costs. BIM, a lot of saving rework. You don't have to rework. Let's say the designer gives the model to the contractor, and then the contractor has to do all the rework again because the designer did not follow the same standards. So, and also Building Smart is leading the digital transformation. Of course, using all these open standards, all these solutions that they provide, the digital workflows. Also, it provides the perfect opportunity to help industry visionaries transform the design, delivery, and operation of tomorrow's built assets. And also, basically anyone can be part of Building Smart, whether it's a country, whether it's a member, whether it's a sponsor, whether it's a partner. And we have a lot of chapters in many countries. And recently, they opened a chapter in the UAE, which I was fortunate to take part of the workshop of. And they're starting to basically implement OpenBIM in the UAE as well. And slowly but surely, more companies will follow that, hopefully, and in the near future, we will have more awareness of that. And that's what we should do. We should have awareness of OpenBIM and also spread that awareness. Okay, these are my references for this presentation. I'm sure you could have a copy of the presentation if you need that. And thank you very much. I hope you found that informative. I hope you learned something. And now we can have questions and answers.
Thank you, Mahmoud.
Thank you.
Thì vừa rồi là cái bài trình bày của bạn ấy, thì không biết là có anh chị các bạn nào có câu hỏi gì không ạ? Trên nhờ Đạt share link Slido xem đã có ai đặt câu hỏi chưa? Turn back to the slide.
Again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah.
About
okay.
That one.
Yeah.
We all know that there's a lot of LOD definition, and in UK or in US or in other country that might be used differently. What is your suggestion for that?
So it's not as much as a suggestion, but it is found in the ISO 19650 standards. It's called level of information need. So now in the ISO standards, it's mentioned briefly, but now it's been mentioned in the UK BIM Alliance more in detail by Marzia Bolpani. They're using a new, sorry, by the end of 2020, and that's going to talk more in detail about it. But you can also go to the UK BIM Alliance. They had a week of presentations there, and she talked in detail about level of information need and how you can apply it in a practical way, right? So even if we previously had it mentioned in the ISO standards briefly, now they're talking about it in much more detail.
Yep.
And again, as I said, you can check BIMQ. Okay, just look it on Google, BIMQ. It is a platform that allows you to use the level of information need at its best.
But you know, a lot of for example, a lot of projects in Vietnam, we use like the system LOD specification by BIM Forum is quite I think it's quite popular among projects around the world as well.
That's true.
What is your observation about that? And within your projects, you know, like the definition of LOD that you do, you know, do for your projects? What is that?
Yeah, well, you are 100% right. Most people use LOD, specifically the US one, right? And there was the 2019 spec of LOD in much more detail. Unfortunately, most of us use that, right? Even I've used it basically everywhere. But it's going to take time to transition from that to level of information need. It's definitely going to take time, right? First of all, you need awareness, first of all, and then you need some study cases about the level of information need. But there are some cases that projects have started using it and it's been successful. And again, it's going to take time, you know, just like anything that comes newly. BIM, for example, started, let's say, very poorly, and then it started picking up, and now it's starting to be mandated by the governments, right? And you're starting to see that companies are obliged to use BIM. So just like that started slowly, but then it's ending up picking up now. We're going to see that change hopefully in the next couple of years, maybe more, but eventually it's.
Could you have could you present some main content from ISO 16739? It's about IFC, I think.
Yeah, it is about IFC. Well, to be honest, I'm not an expert in IFC. IFC is a very, very wide subject, let's say. There are some people who are more, of course, about IFC, if that's required in the future. But yeah, I can give a brief, if you wish to say, or an introduction about IFC. That's possible.
So being
I'm not sure I have any on the. Yeah, maybe specific question. Let me know about that.
I think it's coming from the audience because they picked it up from your. Because we heard a lot about IFC and ISO 16739, but I mean we you know not a lot of people have read that, so maybe just like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to read about IFC and a lot to learn as well. It's like a major by itself, to be honest.
So you're based in Dubai, right?
Yes.
What is the best practice for projects in Dubai now?
Well, currently Dubai is kind of still following the let's say PAS 1192, because you know most of the running projects that started on that are just going to continue and finish on the PAS 1192. So recently, there was a BIM Middle East event. As I was talking, I took part and OpenBIM as well. So that's great because they started the initiative, and the initiative was started by Dubai municipality itself. And so let's say 2 to 3 years down the road, we're going to see much more BIM adoption in the country and in Dubai in specific. So you start to see more projects are going to be done using BIM, and they have a plan of also having the whole city connected in BIM. So that would be great to see, but that's going to take a little bit of time.
So you say that the BIM mandate in Dubai is going to be for next year, 2021?
So they already had a BIM mandate, right, for specific projects, but now it's going to be wider, and it's going to start to adapt the ISO standards and the OpenBIM, workflow. So hopefully, with the coming years, it's going to pick up better.
Could you share some information about BIM mandate in Dubai?
Well, if you'd like to see, you can go to BIM Middle East. You can just type bimmiddleeast.com. You see the speakers, you can see the conference program. So I believe also the presentations are there. Okay, so the presentations are there as well. If you can't reach them, you're going to have to send them an email. Okay, about that.
Yep. Okay.
All right. But yeah, that was the event that the Building Smart chapter was officially announced, basically in Dubai.
Okay. There's another question. So is there?
Sorry, I just pasted the website for you in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this question is about: is there any rule to make sure that information from the model can be exported to IFC without loss? For example, how to set parameter or something like that.
So there's a very important thing to understand about IFC, and it's that it's for coordination. It's not for model transfer, all right? It's made for coordination. So it's not like you can export an IFC model from Revit and be able to continue working on it in ArchiCAD. That's not the way it should be anyway, right? Because first of all, you're protecting your data, right? If you're giving the model in IFC, the other party is just going to be able to view it. They're not going to be able to edit it and change your work probably without you knowing, right? That's an important thing. But the IFC data, okay, if you're talking about the detail that should be in the data properly showing, right? So of course that's possible, and it's not as easy as said, but you can do that, and you can have a verification and validation process set in place just to make sure everything is correctly exported in IFC. And again, as I said, it's not a simple process as you might think. Okay, you can go in Revit and you can click export IFC and export with one click. But how do you make sure everything is exported correctly and mapped correctly, right? So that's also like, if you wish, a big step to do.
So I'm going to translate your answer a little bit for the audience. Câu hỏi của không biết là của anh chị nào, có cái quy tắc nào để đảm bảo thông tin từ mô hình xuất ra FC mà không bị mất không? Ví dụ đặt tên parameter hay là các cái nội dung khác. Thì bạn mai mốt ở đây thì bạn cũng có chia sẻ là thứ nhất là cái định dạng IFC là dùng để phối hợp với nhau. Khi mà mình xuất ra cái định dạng IFC này thì là nó chỉ nhằm mục đích phối hợp, chứ không phải là xuất ra cái IFC này sau đó lại tiếp tục làm việc trên cái file IFC để cập nhật thêm thông tin, vân vân. Thì nó có gọi là IFC, nhưng mà thực ra nó có rất là nhiều các định dạng khác nhau để xuất ra và phục vụ cho những cái mục đích khác nhau. Thì cái này mà các bạn có thể đọc trên cái trang chủ của Building Smart thì sẽ rõ hơn, là có rất nhiều các cái định dạng IFC khác nhau. Thì cái câu trả lời của bạn ấy diễn giả cái bạn đặt câu hỏi thì có thể là lên để trao đổi trực tiếp. So the next, I think you know, the person who asked the question is okay with that answer. So the next question is that, in your opinion, you think that right now IFC is suitable for all type projects? For example, you know, we've been talking about infrastructure projects. Before, when I talked with some BIM expert in Finland, they said that they need to use other format, you know, Finnish format with I think XML base. And but for example, when I talk with people in Korea, they have another format based on IFC, and then I think in US they use the same thing. So in your opinion, what is the status for IFC for all type projects?
Well, I'm not an expert in obviously infrastructure or civil works, but as far as I know, it still needs to be developed for infrastructure. So we understand for the building, it's there and it's very good, but there's always continuous improvement. For infrastructures, I believe they started in some places such as the tunnels, the bridges, but I'm not sure how much they progressed in that. Definitely we can, you know, see what the progress is so far, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of work still to be done to reach the same level that we have in buildings right now.
Yep. Thì câu trả lời của bạn ở đây là bạn ấy cũng không hẳn là expert về các cái dự án bên hạ tầng, thế nên là bạn cũng không nắm được xem là cái IFC thì đã phù hợp cho dự án hạ tầng chưa. Tại vì là ngay cả phía bên văn phòng ban chỉ đạo thì trong cái quá trình trao đổi với lại các bên thì cũng thấy là các cái dự án hạ tầng thì thường là hiện tại nó vẫn còn đang có một số cái khó khăn. Ví dụ như là trước đây cái giai đoạn 2015-2016 thì các cái chuyên gia của Phần Lan thì có sang giới thiệu một cái định dạng gọi là infra model do Phần Lan phát triển thì dựa trên nền tảng của XML. Thế nhưng mà ở bên phía Hàn Quốc hay là bên phía Hoa Kỳ thì họ lại sử dụng nền tảng IFC để xây dựng những cái gọi là định dạng trao đổi đó. Và gần đây thì trong cái gọi là phiên bản IFC mới nhất thì cũng đã nói là hỗ trợ các cái dự án hạ tầng. Thế tuy nhiên là hiện tại thì chưa có văn phòng ban chỉ đạo cũng chưa mời được diễn giả nào là chuyên gia về những cái định dạng đó để có thể là giới thiệu với anh chị và các bạn. Thì chắc là trong thời gian tới thì sẽ cố gắng là tìm một diễn giả nào đó để có thể là trả lời những cái câu hỏi này. Cái câu hỏi tiếp theo là hiện tại mà Việt Nam mới có chỉ có cái hướng dẫn 1057 về BIM, thì trong cái giai đoạn vừa rồi thì văn phòng ban chỉ đạo cũng đã kết hợp với một số chuyên gia cập nhật lại cái hướng dẫn 1057 và đưa một số cái nội dung mà trong cái tiêu chuẩn ISO 19650 đưa vào để thành cái hướng dẫn triển khai BIM chung, cũng như là biên soạn cái hướng dẫn một số nội dung triển khai BIM cho chi tiết cho công trình dân dụng và hạ tầng kỹ thuật. Thì hiện tại đang lấy ý kiến của các cái chuyên gia cũng như là tổ chức và để sắp tới sẽ trình bộ để ban hành.
I sent a nice read about IFC, actually, you know, an article about IFC. Everyone can check. I'm gonna also just share now, what do you say, a level of information need case study implemented using BIM-Q. Okay, I'm just gonna paste that here. Okay, so whoever is interested to read more about it, you can download this PDF and read about it.
Oh, the next question is that why we have to perform two steps in the slide of as-built validation?
Okay, so
could you reshare that part
and
later?
All right, just let me share. You need to stop sharing for me to be able to share. Thank you. Right, I'm just gonna go to, actually this slide was taken from my final master thesis with my wonderful team. We did a great job on that. So I'm just gonna go to my presentation on that in the FMT. So the as-built validation is just made into two steps. It's my take on it. It's me and my team take on it in the final master thesis. So we made it into just first step is initial validation, and then the second step is final validation. It's not that much of a different, but we're just introducing here the authoring software and the design review software and recap, as you can see here. So let me just get back to that one. Sorry, let me share that again correctly. So that's what we see, right? Two steps. So the initial validation basically is uploading the IFC and the point cloud into BIM and Scan AutoCore. And both of them are open formats, IFC and E57. E57 is the open format for point cloud data. We know that RCP and RCS are the formats for Autodesk. So we run the first validation report based on a desired level of accuracy, right? So how much accurate do you want the scan against the model to be giving you the error based on? So in this case, it's 25 millimeters, and that's LOA 10. Of course, there's the LOA spec done by the US as well. So after that, we check the reports and we check the point cloud files extracted, and then we can understand where the issues are. So we use the authoring tool. You can use Revit. You have something called BCF Manager. You can install this plugin on Revit, on ArchiCAD, on Navisworks, on any other software you want. You can install that. And that helps you navigate to the issues. As I said, in a click, you can immediately go to the issue and see it in 3D, right? Now, if you have the point cloud underlaid in the model, you can also see the point cloud against it. And that helps you see what the difference is. And what usually BIM and Scan does is that it shows you the issues in red, telling you that something is wrong in here. So there's more than 25 mm difference, and it shows you then in green that it's perfectly fine. It's aligned, or it's within the limit. And then you solve these issues in the authoring software, right? So if I'm just going to talk in the example of Revit, we used Revit to solve these issues. Let's say a column is far away from where it is in the as-built. We move it back, right, into the correct position. So after we do these changes, right, we need to rerun the validation because we need the report showing that these issues have been solved, right? These have been closed. So you need a report, let's say, that shows less issues in a sense. So it's just that the second step shows what we do through this process, right? So first step is just running the process, the report, just running the comparison. That's automatically done in the cloud. And the second step is getting into the software review, design review, or the editing software to fix these, right? So once you fix them, you go through the validation again. And again, you can use all possible tools to view them. You can use Recap, you can use Navisworks, you can use BIM Collab, you can use Revit or ArchiCAD. And that's basically the process in very brief. Again, also, if you'd like, I can show you an example of that. I can share with you a little bit also from the report we've done on that as well. All right. Great. So that's the report I've done. I'm just going to go quickly and show you what was done basically. So the report was basically created by BIM and Scan AutoCore. All right. And the way you do that is you see BIM and scan here. You just have to go to the website, and you think you can get a trial. You need to upload the models, and then you click. You see here, you see the tolerance, and you see the model file IFC, and you see the point cloud file, and then you click run, and it creates this this basically report for you, and it exports as well a point cloud file that you can see to compare against in the authoring software. So as you can see here in this model, in this image, sorry, this is the point cloud showing in red what's been missing, okay, against the model actually. So whatever's in red is something wrong, right? So you see the green beams here are correct, okay? You see these red items are all misplaced or, you know, not found. So as an example here in Revit, you see the BCF manager plugin here, right? So in this example, I just double clicked on this issue, and it took me to the 3D showing me here that this is what it's pointing at, which is this circular sphere. So for example, right, that's just an example showing you. Means it's acceptable. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so that's just an example of before, okay, in the red, and after, which is in blue. Okay, and you can see here with the issues in the BCF, you can assign it to someone, put it on a milestone, put a deadline, description, comment, even take a screenshot and start scribbling on it if you want. Okay, and let's say this is just an example of the whole workflow that was done basically. Okay, so as you can see here, before and after for this red thing, it came out to be correct. That's why it shows here in a greenish color. All right. Yeah, so basically that's just a quick example of what you're asking about.
So I think that that example cover another question of BIM. Because you show you stop the flow and then what with yeah. So the last question is I development will it have an impact on COBie? Is maybe in the next like a format or like IFC we won't need COBie anymore. What is your view on?
I don't think so. COBie relies on IFC. You don't need COBie because you need to provide for the management, right? Able to run your that data to input to programs like IBM Maximo, and it's in the same format. So I don't think COBie is going to go anywhere. Maybe it's going to evolve, be developed, but anyway, it relies on 2x3 coordination view.
Okay. So it is clear that like a COBie and IFC is two different, two separate things.
They're not really like, they're connected, of course. Again, that's why we talked about the green handover when I talked about the COBie, right? Again, now, if you go to Revit, for example, you have something called Bim Interoperability Tools. And this extension is excellent in exporting IFC data from processing to IFC and then extracting the COBie data from the IFC. It's just, again, something I've done also. Extract IFC file, and then you can verify that using something like BIM server. You can meet that as well. That simplifies this process. But yeah, BIM Interoperability Tools is found on every Revit that you have installed basically by default. And there's a Kobe extension for that, and worked great. So, but again, Kobe, just like IFC, Kobe is like it's like a whole major by itself. Also, you need to really look into it. There's now a certification program for Kobe that anyone can enroll in. I guess the university is in Florida, but you can enroll online to this course and get a certification at the end of it.
I just saw this morning that Bill is have an announcement about, you know, Bill is I think he's kind of the creator of Kobe or some sort.
Billy's, yep.
Yeah. He announced that BSI is considering a course on Kobe, and they're gonna have a certified program on that.
There you go. That's so it's on the contrary, it's getting more exposure, right? And yeah, so that's good that you can have a certification now to understand if a person is qualified with Kobe.
That is the last question. I'm gonna ask the audience to see if they have any more question. Không biết là trong diễn đàn còn anh chị và các bạn nào có câu hỏi không ạ? Bây giờ là bạn đã rồi xong cuối cùng, biết là anh chị nào mà gì không thể phía ban tổ chức hỏi. So I think the question. So we sincerely thank you for your time and your presentation, and we hope that you enjoy the presentation. You know, enjoy presenting and answering questions today, and we hope that we can we will meet you again in another event with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Hope to see you again and collaborate together. Thanks.
Cheers.
Yes.